Talk about the nick of time. My goodness. Good to see you. All right. We have special guests in the studio today, and we have a bunch of them. So Bob, grab that microphone, young man, and we have distinguished guets from Israel today,
Yes,
right?
we do. We've got our friend, Consul General Andy David, here in studio, and it's a little bit of a bittersweet moment. Andy is going to be finishing up his responsibilities here in the U.S. and going back to Israel in August. And just a quick little story, because I think this is so important. 4 years ago, Andy made his first visit here to Montana. And I remember a conversation we had, and Andy said to me, what do I have to do to get some things on track, to get some relationships being built? And I said very simply, Andy, you got to come back. And he's fulfilled every one of the promises that he's made. And it's recently culminated in a trade mission between Montana and Israel. Pajita Free, where the World Trade Center brought a delegation of Montana, Missoula, and Bozeman businesses over to Israel. So this is very much a part of the legacy that Andy leaves with us. And forever, I wish to thank him for both the friendship and for the professionalism that he has shown over the years. So, Andy, welcome back to Montana.
Thank you, Bob. I'm humbled to be again here, and thank you for your kind words. It's very simple. I come here because I love it.
Yeah,
I love the people. I love the state. I love the cities. I love the mountains. It's so beautiful, and why not come back? But if I'm coming back, I need to do something, right?
So next
that's
time
what I'm
come
doing.
Back, we'll be in an unofficial capacity as our guest. Bring in the family.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Bob.
Well, we'll save a great big fish for you.
Thank you.
And you've brought with you two very special guests.
Yes, indeed.
That we're going to be having a very lengthy discussion today with a issue and topic that's very close and near and dear to us here in Montana and the West, water. So if you would please introduce our guests.
Yes, thank you, Bob. So a while ago, I met with the Lieutenant Governor, Mike Cooney, and I asked him what's some of your concern, and he said water, drought, and I said, hey, Israel has gone through some of that, and in a way, we solved our issues. We're no longer dependent on rain as we used to because we did something about it, and I'm offering to bring some Israeli expertise. So this week,
I'm fascinated to know, what did you do?
Well, let's hear it from our experts.
Excellent.
So I finally brought some of our top experts, Professor Avner Adin, who has a long career in teaching and research, but also in practicing what he teaches, consulting, and doing projects. And with him is Ra'anan Adin, who's CEO of the Adin Holding Company, been doing consulting and projects all over the world as well. And together, it's the A-team, the Adin team. So I brought him over to meet with the governor, and not only with the governor, but the governor arranged 2 full days of program. We met so many experts. We've traveled. We went to the Butte to see the Berkeley Pit. We've seen other things. So there's a lot to discuss. There's a lot to learn from each other.
We're trying to sell that, by the way.
Tell me about the commission. I'll maybe help you with that.
Water in it.
Yeah, there's water in it.
You might say it's glowing with praise.
Right.
But, anyway.
But we're not just here to solve that issue. It's
right.
about looking at the whole holistic
Sure.
way of doing business in water and how to manage water. But that's what I brought the experts for. So I'm not a water expert. I'm a door opener. That's what I am.
So shall we speak with one of the A-team? Go ahead, sir. Yeah. Who's first?
Go ahead. Well, I can be first. Very glad to be here, and thank you so much for this reception. I really appreciate it.
Now, could you identify yourself for us, sir?
So, my name is Avner Adin. I'm an emeritus professor at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. I'm basically an environmental engineer who has been dealing with water treatment, water reuse, recycling of water. And I am both, I would say, both teaching and doing research, but I try also to apply my work. And in the recent years, I more and more give time to help the world because water has become a problem all over the globe. And with the climate change, we are facing more troubles. So, of course, Israel, but all the rest of the world, I think, should get some more information and enthusiasm in order to face the future water problems.
Now, Mr. Adin, in an arid land like Israel, of course, all through the Middle East, I'm sure Israel probably has more water. You're probably more fortunate with more water than some. But what is, if there's one thing that you could say that you have been able to find that helps your country that you would like to share with the rest of the world, what one procedure would that be?
Well, the procedure would be to be bold, to try to go and try and do things that were only in the books, but you know that you can succeed in doing it by applying, like thinking out of the box. And of course, I mean, the severe water circumstances are a big driving force to Israel. But you know, 3,000 years ago, Moses hit a rock with a stick and water came out. But today we don't have miracles like this. So you will have to work out and develop more and more water resources.
So a question for both of you. I think it would be helpful for the audience to understand that 1948, in modern times, country of Israel is reformed, gets its independence. One of your greatest challenges was, how do you bring all the people that were going to be coming in from different countries that potentially could overwhelm the resources that you had available? And my brief research kind of identifies that water was really the catalyst, and the catalyst for change that lent itself to your ability to grow in the desert. And, of course, from a national security perspective also, give us a little background in terms of what was happening at that time.
Tell you what, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. We have to take a break every 10 minutes, and we're going to come right back with more with our special guests. I know you're sitting on the edge of your seat, as am I, even though I'm standing, so it's rather uncomfortable. But anyway, we're going to come right back with more of Talk Back. The Montana World Affairs Council on the radio continues in a moment. Welcome back to Talk Back, the Montana World Affairs Council on the radio, and we're talking about specifically water with our special guests from Israel. So go ahead, Bob.
1948, you're a nascent nation. You have people coming from all over the world to Israel. One of the challenges amongst many is, how are you going to feed them? What are the resources that you have available? It's a dry country. It's desert. So something happens at that time that sets the stage, that brings us to the present. That's an amazing story and goes to the spirit and heart, I think, of the Israeli people. So if you would, please.
Okay, Shem. I'm Ra'anan Adin. I'm very pleased to be here in Montana, this wonderful place, and I'm visiting it at a wonderful time. Well, Israel did have a challenge. We started with less than 1 million people. We are now more than 8 million. And the resources were scarce from the beginning. There were two challenges. One challenge was to use the available water, mainly groundwater at the time. And the other was to bring water to where it's needed, since there's only one big or one meaningful surface water reservoir in Israel. It's the Sea of Galilee. But it's far away from where people lived and populated. So the first big project was the Israel's national water carrier, which brought water from this lake in the north way to the south, which is practically desert. And it was designated for agriculture so that the population could use freely the groundwater without being burdened by the agriculture. So here you have the first water-food nexus being solved in Israel. Our population kept growing and needs kept increasing, and we needed new types of water. The next new type of water that was developed was reused wastewater. And today, 85% of Israel's wastewater is reused, and it accounts for 50% of the agriculture demand.
When did you start that process?
That was around 64.
So let's go back a little bit, because I want to come back to the question of the wastewater. You had a project to bring water from the north to the south.
Yeah.
And there was an event that happened that also gave you access and rights to property in the Sinai? Or was it the Negev desert?
No, this is the north of the Negev.
Okay.
Sinai came in 67 and was not it wasn't part of the agricultural plan.
But you had to bring water through a certain methodology, which was pipelines.
Yeah.
And you know the story behind the pipelines, where they got the pipes from? You should know this as an Israeli and a water expert.
We'll turn to the veterans.
Okay.
No, I believe we started a pipe industry in Israel.
My apologies, sir. I shouldn't.
Yes.
Great Britain, in order to be able to, in effect, have dual water systems, builds another piping system because of the bombing that's taken place during World War II. Piping system's not destroyed. Israel goes to the Brits, who, of course, were in conflict with Israel at that time, and buys the piping system. And the pipeline's one of the most expensive projects ever per capita, and brings those pipes back, which is where the piping comes from the north of Israel down to the desert. So I'll be testing you on your history later, gentlemen, okay?
Well, I didn't recognize that we are on a British territory right now.
Right. Well, gentlemen,
thank you for your good humor.
We do have a caller, so we probably need to strap some. You've got some headphones, Andy. You can grab one. All right, let's get Dave on the line. Dave, you're on with our special guest from Israel. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning. I've read that there's a large aquifer underneath the West Bank in Palestinian areas, and I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I assume both the Israelis and the Palestinians want control of that water, and that's part of the problem with peace in the Middle East. Is this true?
Okay. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate the call. So, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you for the question. There has been an aquifer called the Mountain Aquifer. Israelis have been using it for generations. Palestinians also use it. Israel is providing the Palestinians with most of their water needs. And actually, the aquifer serves both countries. The main problem today is that most, if not all, the Palestinian settlements do not treat their wastewater. And the wastewater seeps into the ground there and polluting the aquifer. And this is something that can be worked out only by collaboration and by water reuse, as being done in Israel so far.
Yeah, and if I may add something, if you look at the amount of water that every person receives, the Palestinians receive more water than any of their Arab neighbors. So more water than Jordanians or Syrians. So that's an important fact, and that is only due to Israel's efforts.
Now, I have a question for the three of you gentlemen. I would imagine that those pipelines would be a huge target for an enemy of Israel if they wanted to disrupt your economy and the way you folks live. What is the security for those pipelines? Is that something either of you can answer?
Well, there are various national infrastructures which are a target. We have a lot of collaboration between the Water Authority, particularly the Water Security Department, Water Security and Safety Department, on these issues. Parts of the pipeline are being physically protected, others are being monitored. But this is the time to say that we are not in a continuous war situation. If you read the newspapers, you always see that there's a conflict, and there's a conflict, but we're not in continuous war. So when there is a specific battle or a specific challenge, then things are protected more, and the rest of the time it's just a normal pipeline.
What is daily water usage like for a family in Israel? In Montana, I could just spend all day pouring water onto the ground, and no one would get in trouble. I might have to pay more for the water. And so we read stories about places like California not allowing people to water their lawns, and that surprises us.
Arizona as well.
What is it like in Israel?
Well, in Israel, the consumption is much smaller, maybe 1/3 or 1/4 of what you use here. People have learned that water is life, and particularly the children are bringing home because they study it in school. And also previous situations of, independence war where Jerusalem, for example, was surrounded by Arab armies and they didn't have water, so they learned how to save on water. So water is being greatly appreciated in Israel, but another drive is the price. Mm-hmm. Because water doesn't come, you open the tap and you have water. Water has to be pumped, has to be treated, has to be delivered, and all that costs money. Also in the United States, in Israel, the energy for water is more than 3% of the total energy consumption of the country, and the United States is 4%. And all that has to be put in money terms, where what we don't find too much in Montana, for example. Like in Butte, 40% of the people don't have water meters. So it's all impossible to control it. But I would say that this is just one important thing is water saving. Another important is when you don't have enough water, create what we call new water. And wastewater is one type of new water. And also seawater or brackish water is another source. And all of them are being used in Israel. And this is really called a holistic solution because you expand the water cycle, actually.
Okay, and with that, we're going to be right back. We also have a caller. Mark, if you'll hold on. We have 3 other lines open for our guest from Israel, and we're going to come right back with more of the Montana World Affairs Council on the radio in a moment. Hey, welcome back to Talk Back, the Montana World Affairs Council on the radio. Joining us this morning is the outgoing Consul General of the State of Israel, Dr. Andy David. Also with us, Avner Adin and Ronan Adin. We're talking about water. How did I do, by the way, on the pronunciation? Did I do okay on the pronunciation?
Excellent.
Okay,
Excellent.
Super. I can stay for the rest of the hour.
You can immigrate to Israel now.
All right, now, we do have a caller. So, actually, we had a question about the human capital involved in making all this happen. So, in the 3 minutes we have between now and our hard break, so who wants to talk about that?
Well, innovation is a key issue in Israel. Israel is known for this. We're known for this in high-tech and other industries, but it's also very evident in water. The way we nurture or encourage innovation is water, primarily is by having the whole nation recruited to this issue. And there are, for example, from the top down, from the government, the Ministry of Economy, water corporations and the National Water Company are encouraged to host startups, to put their infrastructure at risk by testing new technologies. But in that way, they are testing the new technologies and they are helping to mature them to become operational technologies.
Okay, let's get our caller on the line. Mark, thanks for holding. You're on Talkback with our guests. Go ahead.
Hi, guys. I'm going to listen offline and just have a question. With all the scientists in the world and all the computers, what's the problem with converting seawater, which covers a major portion of the earth, into drinking water?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so it's called desalinization. So, gentlemen, you've already made great strides in that department, right?
Yes, well, desalination is now, I would say that following recent advances, desalination has become a commodity. Of course, you need a seashore for that. But once you have it, the latest desalination plant in Israel produces a cubic meter of water for 52 US cents. Okay? A cubic meter of water, I need to translate it to gallons somehow, but it's a very low price. Okay? And this desalination has become from energy recovery, from better and larger membranes, from pre-treatment and post-treatment, and having large facilities which make the economy of it much, much easier.
So you brought the cost down. So how does your cost compare to other countries in the region that also use that process? My understanding is you're significantly cheaper. Is that because of what you just described, the applicability of technology and innovation?
Yes, absolutely. And I would also mention Israel is a very small country. Most of Israeli companies have more installations outside of Israel than they do in Israel. So countries around the world can also enjoy all these benefits in their territory.
And we are almost out of time. I have to hit a hard break. So we have a whole other hour to talk about this. It's incredibly fascinating. And we'd love to have your phone calls and questions. You can also make your comments on our Facebook page. Give us a call, 721-1290. We'll take our hard break at the top of the hour, get done with Fox News, and return with our guests from the Montana World Affairs Council on the radio. Okay, the Montana World Affairs Council on the radio continues. We have special guests in studio because I'm not sure what happened to Bob. He just disappeared.
Nature called, I think. Yeah.
There you go. All right. Well,
he's recycling. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it. All right. So now we're in the middle of talking about water. So go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you just generally, coming from Montana, we talked a little bit about water usage differences between my state and your country. I guess my question for you is, do you think this technology is something that every country could use? Is it, at the price point now where everybody could get into using it, and do you think they would benefit from it? Or do you think it's only a technology system that's applicable in, kind of desert environments or where water resources are very scarce?
Well, California is using desalination of Israeli technology in the area of Carlsbad. There's a plant there supplying 15% of the whole San Diego area water. So and they're thinking about building some more. I think that it's not limited just to Israel, certainly not. And countries that feel that they need more solutions, I think we can help them with that.
So Andy, let's bring this right to Montana and ask our experts here. You come to Montana, you meet initially, and I want to be very clear. Nobody is suggesting that an Israeli delegation is coming to Montana to tell us what to do with our water.
Of course not.
God forbid.
We have mayors and governors for that.
Exactly. But but when you come here, you obviously can see and discuss what some of our issues and concerns are. So what do you bring in the way of dialogue? How do you open up that discussion to talk about some of the issues that you've been confronted with, how you've dealt with them, and where the synergies are with Montana?
Well, first of all, solutions are the second step in the way. Technology is the third. The first is observation. And what we did see here, we can say we saw several observations. The first thing which is very, very clear is that the government cares a lot about water. Okay? They care and they are concerned. Okay? They see this, there are macro things happening. Some things are, you could say, but that they have control of, like policies. Some they don't, like climate change. But what is going to change? What is going to change? We need to adapt to this. And since the change is national, then the state government feels responsible to do it. And this was very clear in all the attention that our visit got here. This was overwhelming. Another thing we observed is that there is a lot of diversity. There's diversity even within the state of climate diversity. There is usage diversity. There are seasonal diversities in tourism. There are way more tourists here than there are local population. Okay? And this diversity is something that we know in Israel, because we have desert in the south and we have a ski resort in the north. And when I say desert, I mean sand and camels. And we have everything on the way in between. So this diversity also requires something, I would say, more centralistic in view to overlook things and bring the local solutions in a way that their interaction with the neighbors will still be effective. Okay?
Yeah. And I mean,
go ahead.
This means strategic thinking, holistic thinking, but this can be translated also to real things. If we look at agriculture, for example, there are quite a few Israeli technologies, developments that are being used in many other countries. And one of the practical thing that could be done is to take a small, 4 or 5 acre plot and build there a demonstration farm using Israeli technology like the drip irrigation systems, comparing reused wastewater irrigating with regular water irrigating. You can raise high-value crops on a very small area. I mean, this disturb the farmer from doing what they've done for ages, but can introduce something new to learn from.
Let me ask all of you a question. Does this technology, is it extant only capable of first world countries, or are there third world countries that could use the same type of technology where there's extreme poverty and they're having a hard time just putting a government together, much less worried about water? So how can that help the rest of the world?
In 1958, the first international development cooperation program started between Israel and Ghana in Africa. And since then, we're talking about almost 60 years now, we've had a lot of experience in doing those exactly what you were describing, projects in many, many developing countries. When it comes to drip irrigation, you don't need necessarily very sophisticated pumps and energy. You can use gravity. There are systems where you use the gravity. You take a barrel and you put the right system, and with gravity, you water a whole plot. And there's so many other things when it comes to recycling. There are simple systems and there are more sophisticated ones. So certainly there's a lot of solutions that are now being deployed around the world. Some of them come from Israel. Comes to greenhouses technologies and other agricultural technologies. So it's not necessarily high cost, but it can produce much higher value for the farmers and for the people.
Yeah, we did a show not too long ago on Talkback with a young man who was going to a rural village in Africa to bring
Sierra Leone.
Yeah, to bring a tub that would basically they could roll from a water source to their home village. And it seems to me like a lot of the big water problems in the world are in places that probably can't afford even the pipes to get something like this done. Are there cooperations between Israel and other countries to try to bring water technology to some of the more difficult places in the planet?
This is an excellent question. You see, many simple devices need sometimes a lot of deep research and a lot of know-how in order to create them. But once they are created, they are fantastic. Like what you said, in Israel, they developed like a jar that you can take from the river in Africa and put it on your head and bring it to the village. But in this jar, you put a little element of chlorine, like a pill, and it is dissolved on the way to your home, and it kills the bacteria. So when you got home, the people can drink the water safely. And quite a few innovations like this, that some of them are being contributed. There is also there are also volunteering projects that Israelis are participating in Africa and other countries, and help people, really.
We're going to come right back. We also have Mark on the line. If you'll hang on, we have 3 other lines open for our guests from Israel, talking about water and the many ways that they have discovered and developed to try to make it last and for their population, and sharing that with the rest of the world. We're going to come right back with more in a moment. Hey, thanks for joining us on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. We have guests in the studio from Israel. We are absolutely thrilled to have and honored to have them with us here this morning. Andy David, Avner Abdin, and Ranan Adin. And let's get Mark on the line. You have a quick question. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. Your development costs and research costs, I hope you have a way that you can get money back from the people that can afford to pay if they use your product. I'll listen offline. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So how do you regain those costs from the people that you either sell or share this technology with? Go ahead, Andy.
Well, people are used to pay for food, right?
Right.
And somehow they look at water differently, as if water is a resource that should be given free. And I wish that was the case. Certainly, as an Israeli, I would like to use water freely and without paying for it. But we also understand that water can be looked at as a commodity. We pay for what we use. And if you give a realistic cost to that and you charge the people for what they use, they're willing to do that because then they get better service. They get more water security. They know that they'll always get the water that they need when they need it. If you don't pay for it, then sometimes you cannot demand service that you expect. But maybe my colleagues here have some more insights into that.
Well, there are, I would say, two answers to this question. One issue is the water sector itself. The water sector in Israel is a closed economy, meaning it should supply its own investments and it should supply its own costs and it should sustain itself economically. It forces the water cost or the water price for the consumer to be realistic. Okay? But it also forces to have long-term planning, because that's what big investments work like. We have to have a 30 or 40-year plan in order to accommodate for economic planning of large investments like desalination plants, like very long pipelines, in order to be able to spread this out along the time and keep water costs stable and not too high and without surprises. So that's one issue, the water sector. The other issue is innovation. We encourage innovation. How do we get paid back? Well, we get paid back twice. We get paid back once because this innovation is implemented, and we get new technology and better quality, better management. But also, when this goes abroad, we get more work, we've got more people employed, we get more foreign currency, we get more taxes from this economic activity. And it usually is multiples of what was invested in this in the beginning.
So I noticed Ron has been taking the free water very liberally over here. He's on his second glass now. I guess my question for you is, it is hard for us to grow up in America and to put a cost on water. I guess my question is, like, what would that cost? What would that glass of water cost in Israel?
Okay, we need to... a gallon is almost 4 liters, which means a cubic meter is about 400 gallons. Okay.
I didn't realize we were going to have to do
astronomical
math here.
Let's calculate.
4,000 gallons.
1 cubic meter. 1,000.
Andy's got it. He's got a calculator.
I need my optic technology, yes. My glasses, in order to see what's written. Okay, 1 cubic meter is 264. Now take $2 and divide it by 264. Okay, that would be the price of a gallon.
So while he's doing that math, I've got a question for you. When you're talking about the pricing point, and this applies directly to us here in Montana, there was a time when the municipalities had control of the water in Israel, correct?
So it's 7 cents is what you'd pay?
No, it's less than a cent. It's 0.7. One gallon would be 0.7.
0.7 cents for a gallon.
Very, very cheap in Israel.
Yes.
No.
But there's a story within a story. The Israeli people have bought into the cost savings in terms of being aware and having conservation-minded approaches to this. So your municipalities had control over the water. They were using profits from water sales that would go to other aspects of running the municipality. Meanwhile, the infrastructure is suffering. Mm-hmm. Your organization, or please describe who it is, steps in and says, we're taking over. There's got to be a price point. Money that is being generated has to go back into infrastructure to ultimately bring the cost down. Mm-hmm. So give us a little background in terms of what was the trigger of that happening and why, and how has that changed the dynamic, particularly amongst the citizenry?
Well, the main trigger was eventually the economy of water. When infrastructure is neglected, water is lost. And water is lost, and then it costs more. If you have 30% of the water leaking, it means you need to generate 6 gallons in order to use 4. Okay? And this was one of the issues that brought the change. And once you give the municipality or the local water corporation the responsibility for this closed economy, then naturally it happens. It's their own interest to invest in this infrastructure, and it's a non-issue. Okay? There's no argument about it because the authority and the responsibility are in the same place.
We have a break, but we have an amazingly similar situation going on right here in Missoula, Montana. Over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a huge fight over our municipal water system. It was originally owned by a large multinational group called Carlyle. And our mayor and the city council sued to condemn the water system and then purchased it. And one of the things that came out during there was a trial over all this, was that anywhere from 40 to 50% of the water flowing through the pipes that were present under the streets of Missoula was being lost. And so that was one of the arguments that the city used to say, we need to take this over because you guys obviously aren't taking this seriously enough. So, and they did win. So anyway, we're going to come right back, talk more about what's happening in Israel and right here in, if you will, River City. We're going to come right back in a moment.
Yeah.
Oh, we may be halfway around the world from Israel, but we have our water situation right here in good old Missoula, Montana, that we're just sharing with our guests, where the city of Missoula has condemned through the process of condemnation. They're allowed to do that. It went through a trial, and with about $98 or $96 million for the price of the water system, and all of the employees, it could be more than that.
They took out $140 million?
Oh, yeah, they took out $140 million just in case. So,
a not rainy day fund, I guess.
Yeah, anyway. So, but all of the employees of what is now Mountain Water Company have been offered positions with the city to work for the city, which will be called the Missoula Water Company. All right? And I'm not sure what kind of plans are in place to fix the infrastructure, because there are a great deal of problems, although, very, very few complaints from the citizens. But one of the things in the trial that was brought out, a great deal of water was being lost because of the poor condition of some of the water mains and things like that. So anyway, and so how does that relate to what you folks do in Israel?
Yeah, but firstly, we talked about Britain before with the pipes, so I can tell you a short story. London also had a very big drought, and still they have water problems. So people approached the mayor and told him, why don't we put a desalination plant on the Thames River? And he said, look, 30% of the water are running out of the pipes, are leaking. So if I build a desalination plant, 30% of it will leak out, so I cannot afford this at this moment. In Israel, there has been a lot of effort, and the leakage from pipes in the country has been reduced from 30% or 40% to less than 10%, and it's going down. And one of the reasons is the change in the structure of the water entities. So in Israel, it used to be held by the city. Yeah, and there was water departments. Later, we have realized that it's better to form kind of a water corporations that will be non-profit public entities. The city will have there a place in the board, of course, but it will run in a closed budget. So any penny, any cent that goes to this water corporation will be reused. It's a kind of recycling of money. Yes, will be reused and reinvested in the water system. Now, not everything is gold like you take out from the mines here. Okay, so what happened at that time, several years ago, that too many corporations were formed because of political issues. So now the parliament in Israel has taken a lead, and we are going to have a new regulation where no more than 10 to 15 corporations will be in the whole country of Israel. And this, hopefully, will solve the problem.
When it comes to the original transfer from the municipalities to these nonprofit corporations that are running the water system, because we're kind of going backwards here in Missoula. We are going from a private corporation that was governed by a nonprofit public entity called the Public Service Commission. We're going from that to a municipality-owned issue, and then you went from that situation to an even bigger kind of government order. I guess my question is, when it was in the municipality's hands, what problems were popping up that led to the transfer of governance?
Okay, well, first of all, we need to give credit. Several municipalities did handle water correctly and did invest in it, and sometimes even more than the return. But since they were the minor portion of municipalities, what was formed were water corporations. We need to differentiate between whether it's private or public to ask how is it run. Now, it's run as a company, though it's a public entity. It's not privately held. It's held by the country, but it's run as a company. It has a budget. It has a CEO.
Does
it has
it make
a board.
a profit?
It's not allowed to make a profit. It does try to make a profit, but the profit is reinvested, as was mentioned before. Okay, so it's not really a non-profit. They would like to make a profit in order to invest more in the infrastructure, but this profit doesn't go to the board. Okay? Now, once it's run as a company, then it can also, for example, some municipalities serve other municipalities because they give service. This company can give service and get paid for it in this closed budget. So there's a lot of flexibility in optimizing the resources and in managing the infrastructure.
So I understand that system. I guess my question was, before you shifted to that system, there was a problem. You said that most of the municipalities, although a few were good, many had mismanaged in some way the water systems. I guess I wanted to know what they were doing incorrectly.
What they were doing, they were prioritizing municipality issues in a way that does not give water its, I would say, its a level of attention, its correct level of attention on the global scale. Okay? Now, Israel's water sector is managed centrally by the Water Authority. And authority is very important because they have a responsibility and they have the authority to exercise this responsibility. They are the only ones who have the full picture. A municipality does not have the full picture. Okay? A municipality interacts with its citizens more in terms of water. Okay, let's remember we're talking about in terms of water. The interactions of the water in the municipality with its neighbors is different versus the interaction of other things. Okay? And you need to sort of have this whole picture. What the Water Corporation change did is that these corporations started also discussing among themselves. They started generating infrastructure projects of piping water among water corporations, meaning they were all of a sudden thinking nationally. Now, these are things that couldn't happen earlier. So
Okay.
it's a different thing.
And with that, we're up against a break, and we're going to come right back. We have all of our lines open. This is fascinating because we have been going through this for the last 3 or 4 years, and so it's right at the top of our wheelhouse, if you will, as what we've been going through as a city, back and forth and back and forth. And we're going to come right back, continue this conversation. We have all 4 lines open at 721-1290. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, we are back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number, and I just brought up a point to our guests, and we're talking about how water is managed in Israel, and it is fascinating, and it's incredibly successful. We just went through a 3-year fight here in Missoula for the city of Missoula wanted to purchase or, if you will, acquire the privately owned Mountain Water Company, and that is now near completion, but some people are afraid that the monies that come in through this water system will not be used to fix the infrastructure and to repair the pipes and that sort of thing, but rather will be used as a perpetual piggy bank for whatever type of special things that need to be done. Well, we'll just up the water rates, and that way we'll have extra money. So from your perspective, now we've been assured over and over again that's not going to happen. So from your perspective, as outsiders looking at our situation, how do you see, from your perspective, what that means?
Yeah, I would say you can argue with politics and arguments like this with good professionalism, and one way that can be approached it is to do a holistic, strategic, professional master plan for a long term, and answer those questions within the framework of this plan, and explain to the people. And the best thing to do is to involve the people. Like in one project in Tel Aviv, we formed a water club. And in this water club, we invited all related people and departments and even the farmers that provide food to the city, where the city gives the farmer water or reused water. And the discussion went in a way that everybody will be involved. And out of this came the water issue in the Tel Aviv strategic planning. And this is one way, and anyway that I would trust. You see, I don't know if I have any other magic things to say.
I can say if another issue is, well, either way, things need to be run correctly. When you form a company or a corporation, even if it's owned by the municipality, it has its overheads, and there's a concern whether these overheads are justified. When the operation is embedded within the municipality, there's more place for optimization and sharing resources, but then there's a risk of not prioritizing correctly. I mean, either way, there are pros and cons, and since we are, as we said, in observation phase, these things need to be considered here by the people, by the municipality, and planning is one way to at least define the road that you're going to drive and try to keep it and maintain it. And also, it could be that a good professional comparison of these two alternatives could be in place in order to really visualize the pros and cons, choose the better one for Missoula, and overcome whatever cons it may have.
It sounds like we need to send our mayor to Israel.
He's always invited.
He's always. So, did you want to get to?
We do have a caller. So let's. This is a talk show. We like to get our callers in. I believe Dave is back. Go ahead, Dave.
Yes, I was curious. I didn't hear. Now the water rates, are they the same for like a farmer and let's say a rich person with a swimming pool and lots of lawn to water? And the poor person who may not have money. I'm just curious what the rates, do they vary? And the volume is allotted?
So are you asking perhaps if poor people's water rates are subsidized, perhaps?
It's possible, yeah. I'm just curious, or farmers who use a lot of water.
Okay, all right. So let's
I'm curious the rates and what they charge.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Gentlemen, so are there different rates for different people when it comes to water?
Well, actually, it goes by sections.
Okay.
Like the agricultural water is cheaper than the city water, and particularly if you are reusing wastewater. Industry gets either similar water or some other specific arrangement, but mostly the same prices. The poor people in Israel, they get their assistance with other ways, like through the national security and income tax law and other ways. They have to manage their own money. But there is one point, like in my city, the size of the family counts. Like if you have 2 children or 3 children or 4 children, you pay less money. You have to fill out a form, a request, and normally it's accepted and you pay less.
So in Israel, does this apply across the full spectrum? Do Orthodox Jews have any dispensation from that? Because that's been an issue in the country in terms of military service, large families, population growing rapidly, consuming more resources. Has that been an internal discussion that has been addressed?
Well, water does not differentiate, and the rules are generic. The way that this reduced price is practiced is that there is a certain quota which gets a relatively low price. Once you exceed this, you pay a higher price. Now, this quota is bigger if you have more children, because you have more users within the household. Okay, so that's the way we sort of compensate households which are more populated. But it doesn't have to be children. It can be your mother-in-law.
Mm-hmm. question for both of you, and Andy included. When you have an industry that is as significant as it represents the economy in Israel and growing outside the country, do you have enough qualified people coming up through the educational system that learn the skill sets necessary to be running, operating, and, of course, on the innovation side?
We lack engineers, water engineers, and hydrologists. But in 2004, the Israeli Water Association did a work for the Water Authority, looking at the next year's necessity for professional manpower. We came out with a lack of 2,000 engineers. Since then, several environmental engineering departments and water department have started in Israeli colleges, and also more programs of environmental engineering, like in the Israel Institute of Technology. So it has been understood. We are trying to compete with the business administration on all these type of professions. But I mean, I agree with you. There is lack of engineers, and we have to look more how to promote this profession, because it's really important.
Okay, and with that, we need to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I wish I could continue forever. We only have about 15 or 20 minutes left in our program. If you have a question or comment, we'd love to hear from you. Love to hear from the mayor or a member of the city council talking about what our plans are at Missoula. 721-1290 is our number. We're going to come right back. And we're back on Talkback. And Ra'anan Adin, you had a statement you wanted to make, a request to our listeners. So please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I mean, you say this is Talkback. I want to talk back to the people. I have a question.
Sure.
If the listeners are willing to call and tell us what they think about the water regime and the water management in Missoula and in Montana in general, because we are here to observe and also we are here to learn, and I think it would be fascinating to listen as well.
All right, we have 4 lines. Let's take this challenge. 721-1290 is our number. What do you think of the way water is being managed in Missoula right now and how it might be under the city? So give us a call.
I'd like to hear your opinion just from the outside. I imagine you see waste everywhere when you look at our water system and our water usage. What do you think of the way we use our water?
Well, observation point of view, if I compare, people use more water per capita than in Israel. But you also have more water available. You need to be very careful from making a direct comparison. The comparison should be, are you using more water than you have available here? Are you managing the aquifers and the other water resources, the snow caps, in a way that keeps it sustainable? Now, it's a local arithmetic. And this sustainability is not something that I can come for 2 days and calculate. But I do listen and I do hear that some people say, well, we're not comfortable. We feel that we are lacking we are lacking discipline. We are not valuing water enough. And we would like to make it possibly different.
Okay, go ahead. Andy, you wanted to...
Andy made a point.
Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
Andy made a point off air about security. And the bigger picture that I kind of subscribe to is water is a national security interest and will only grow in its importance. So you had some examples and some insight if you would share with us, please.
Yes, I'm looking at other sectors, for example, Homeland Security sector, where back in the 90s when Americans would come to Israel and look at the airport security arrangements in Israel and say, oh, that would never work in the United States. We would never be willing to go through this kind of security measures. And unfortunately, a crisis occurred, and now you have to. So the question is, do you wait for the crisis to occur before you try quickly to adapt to it, or you take your time making the right plans and choosing the right plan for you?
Okay, let's see if we can get some comments here from one of our local callers. Whoops. Dave, call me back. My big fat finger hit the wrong button, so call back. 721-1290. Sorry. Anyway, so we're moving right along. apologize for that. So, go ahead, Bob.
So moving along, when you're here just until today and then you leave and you go back to Israel, correct? Or do you have other visits in the U.S. before you depart?
Yes, we are visiting San Francisco. And we all know that California is challenged by drought. We are actually more concerned about the past years which did not have a drought, because these rainy years might sometimes defocus the attention, and this is why we keep asking policymakers to make long-term plans.
All right, let's get Dave. Let's go ahead and get Dave on the air. I've got the right button. Go ahead, Dave.
Yes, I visited Missoula wastewater treatment plant, Bozeman, Kalispell, and several others in the state, and I thought we've done a pretty good job of treating our waste. But I'm curious if you've visited any of those plants, what you think.
Dave, let me ask you, because you have a history with wastewater treatment, right?
Right.
What happens to the water? Because nobody's ever asked me this. What happens to the wastewater that is being treated at that plant? Where does it go back into the river, or does it get reused agriculturally? What?
Well, and part of it in Missoula goes to some trees that are planted on site.
Okay.
And then from there it seeps into the ground and goes back into the river.
It goes back into the. Does it go back into the aquifer, or does it just go into the river?
Eventually, it might make it to the aquifer, but it's not pumped into the aquifer.
Well, let me ask: do you think it may be possible with the proper technology to take some of that wastewater and do exactly what the folks are doing in Israel?
I think it is possible, but I am curious to know if he's visited any of our plants, what he compares them to.
All right, thanks, Dave. So, gentlemen?
Yeah, we visited a relatively new wastewater treatment plant in Butte. Mm-hmm. Yes, I didn't mean anything, okay. And it's a fantastic, it's really top of the line plant. The water is pristine, but it's going lost. But the thing that really amazed me is the entering water quality was very low in organic material, and this made me think that the water is so diluted. And why is it diluted, the coming in water? Because people are using a lot of water in the flushing of the toilets, or open valves and things like that, where if it has been used in a more rational way, then you would have much less quantity of wastewater coming in, and it would be much easier, maybe cheaper to treat it. Just one thought,
Do you not use water to flush the toilet in Israel? How does this work?
We have a dual flushing. First of all, the container for the big flushing is about half what is here, and it's enough. And then the small flushing is much, much smaller. But let me tell you one more thing. Okay. In Northern Europe, they develop a type of a toilet that the urine is being collected separately, and it goes for the pharmaceutical industry. And it can go also for fertilizer industry. So there are different ways how to reuse.
Not that we're suggesting this here.
Now, the big flushing, is this always a number 2? Does it tell you? Can it tell by water displacement whether or not you've done?
And we're losing you, John.
The toilets in Israel, they don't talk back. It's just, there are technologies to do, but we
see the ones in Japan.
Yeah.
All right.
We see it eventually in the bill.
We need to take a 1-minute break. We have Mark and Jared who both want to visit with both of you. We're going to come right back in just a moment. Stay with us. Okay. All right, we are rapidly coming to a close, believe it or not. This has been a fascinating conversation, but we do have folks on the line and want to get in. Real quickly, Mark, what's your question?
Okay, I got a question and a comment. My comment is I hope they can see Mayor Ingham before they leave and see what his long-term range planning is for Missoula water.
All right.
And my question is, I've never drank any recycled wastewater, but do you have to take shots or medicine before you drink it?
I don't think so. Yeah, unfortunately, that mic's not working, John. So there you go.
In Israel, we do not drink wastewater. The level is very high of quality, so occasional drinking will not cause you anything. But we are using 85% of the wastewater for irrigation, and it's going up to 90 very soon. So we don't need this. However, in California, for example, they have several testing facilities to provide drinking water out of wastewater. And it's been done in Namibia, in South Africa, for 30 years already, that they are drinking 20% of their water is wastewater. And follow-up by the World Health Organization showed that there was no any problem with that.
Okay, let's get Jared on the line. Jared, thanks for holding. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, hi.
What's on your mind? Yes, I hear you just fine. Go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call. So I've been involved in the water treatment industry for a little while now, and I just wanted to make a comment here. Missoula is very lucky in the fact that its drinking water is barely needing to be treated. It just is essentially pulled from the ground and disinfected. So compared to, Butte or Bozeman or some of these other facilities, Missoula actually has it, pretty darn good. And so this brings me to my comment as far as what I think the situation is on the city taking over control of the water. And the only thing that I can possibly see as a real reason to do this is simply needing another source for tax revenue. There was no actual quality concerns with the water. There was no actual infrastructure concerns with the infrastructure of mountain water. Excuse me. So I think that really the only justification is I'm running out of ways to increase property taxes. How do we get more revenue? So let's take over the water. So I really don't think that we had a problem before. And if there were problems, there were governing bodies that could have taken care of it that way.
Well, one of the things that has been brought up over and over again is that this whole effort, it never went before a public vote. It was simply done by the city council. So,
right, exactly. And if you say, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Is it the quality? Is it the cost? I mean, what is the actual problem you're trying to solve? And nobody could ever really answer that question.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for the call, Jared. Okay, go ahead, Bob.
We just have a couple of minutes, so I'd like to give Andy the opportunity to say some parting words to Missoula and Montana as he will be leaving us, as well as what message from our guests do you want to leave us today from your brief visit?
Well, the main message that I want to leave is a big thank you for the friendship that I have received here through the years. And I want to also say that on my report that I'm leaving for my successor, Missoula, Montana, is at the top of the destination where he has to visit on
and
his
talk
first
back.
And talk back, yeah. To come and visit on his first 3 months. I found it fascinating to visit here. I learned a lot, and I hope that I made a small contribution to get people closer between Israel and Montana.
Anand, go ahead.
Okay, well, I can say that there's no such thing as too much water. There is only enough water, and you need to manage it well. I can say that there's this challenge that you have here is very common, not in its technical terms, but in its essence, very common to many other regions in the world and to many other regions which have already solved it. So I'm very optimistic because I saw the dedication of the policymakers to make a good plan and to execute it correctly with all the stakeholders involved.
Yeah, Professor Adin, please go ahead. Do you have any parting comments?
I also thank a lot for what I would be able to see and learn from you here. I was very happy to meet such professionals from the Natural Reserve, from the mining office, from Technical University in Butte and other people from the mining. I think you have excellent people, and they are eager to find out how to continue for the long term and have a beautiful country with no water problems.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for being with us. Mr. David, we will certainly miss you.
Thank you.
You've been a valuable asset to our show whenever you've been on, and we greatly appreciate it, and we wish you the best.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, John.
Oh, well,
what's coming up tomorrow is we have 1 minute.
We might talk more about water. We have Lisa Tripke on tomorrow. She's running for mayor of
Right,
Missoula.
exactly. So, on behalf of, I really believe that we put all of our talkback programs up on a podcast on our website, and I'm going to let our city council and mayor know that these wonderful folks from Israel were happy to share their expertise and their thoughts and opinions, and I think it would be very helpful for our city officials to be able to say, wow, let's get a worldwide view of what we're doing right here in Missoula, Montana. And I think it would greatly help them in planning and organizing so that we can have a successful transfer of the water, the incredibly precious resource that we have here in Missoula, to the city. So we hope that they'll take advantage of that, and I will certainly encourage them to do so. Gentlemen, thank you so much, and have safe travels back home. Thank you. That's going to do it for us here on Talkback today. Again, Lisa Tripke is going to be our guest from 9 until 10 tomorrow. She's running for mayor, and we hope that you will join us then right here on KGVO.